Okay, this is the first Sunday in the season of Lent. And Lent takes us up to Holy Week and Easter. And so it's a 6-week period. So I thought that would be a nice amount of time, maybe not really sufficient, but a nice chunk of time to look at the small catechism. So that's what we're going to be doing for 6 weeks. At Easter, of course, we will have a class on the resurrection. I haven't picked which gospel, but maybe that would make an interesting element to it. We could look at the resurrection stories in the various gospels. Maybe that'd be a good way to do that. I had another thought, but it has escaped me. So anyway, we're going to be working in Luther's Small Catechism for 6 weeks. Now, it may interest you to know that since we're doing the Small Catechism, in one of Luther's prefaces, I've been reading a lot of this week. He refers to the work of the devil a lot, and his basic argument is if your mind and your mouth are full of God's commandments, the Apostles' Creed, and the Lord's Prayer, there's no room for the devil. So he made it it's a defense. The devil was very real to Martin Luther, and so he recommended this constant repetition of commandments, Apostles' Creed, and the Lord's Prayer as a defense. Just a couple other things. I'm going to put the share to make sure you had a copy of the Small Catechism. And one of the things I sent you was something called the Triglotta. It was a PDF file. That's a weird name for a book. It's actually the Concordia Triglotta.
I thought it was a medical condition.
Yeah. Well,
I had to look up Triglotta too. I found out it was 3 languages. But
three languages, right? What the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod did about 100 years ago. It was on the celebration of the 400th. Yeah, the 400th anniversary of the 95 Theses. They created a Book of Concord with 3 languages, and I'm showing you an example. This is from the Apostles' Creed section, and on the left-hand side is the original German Book of Concord. A Latin translation was the second column, and then because Lutheran Church Missouri Synod was for English readers, the third column was English. So Triglotta stands for 3 languages. This was a rather progressive book. I mean, for 1917, very useful for study of the Lutheran confessions. Anyway, now the PDF file that I sent you called the Triglotta does not include the German and Latin columns. It is based on the English column because it's for English readers. Okay.
Could you imagine the size of that printing if it was, the English is 481 pages. I mean, if it was 1,200 page book, it'd be about 30 pounds.
Yeah, I've never actually seen the book. I don't know. You're right, Bill. It would be a rather large volume, or maybe it was in multi-volumes. I don't know. Okay. Changing the share once again.
The other thing that was interesting, Doug, is that the one that you sent us was in in 1917, but when I looked it up, it said the publishing was 1920. So maybe it took them 3 years to get funding and other things together to have it published in the 1920 edition.
Well, okay, technically, to use the correct language, it is the 1917 Synod Convention approved the publication of the text. And so then it probably took several years to actually create it in hard copy. So you're right. Okay, now I want to lay out a little bit of, and I got to keep some view on my time because this is I'm going to blow this out of the water. But we're studying the Small Catechism, and in particular, we're studying the first major third. There's actually more than 3 parts to the Catechism. 10 Commandments, Apostles' Creed, and Lord's Prayer make up the 3 major pieces. But there's also a section on the baptism and a section on the Lord's Supper, and then even another section on recommended prayers and other Christian duties. So what was the Small Catechism? The Small Catechism notice it's relatively early in Luther's ministry, 1529. And what happened was, as the Lutheran Reformation got started, as it began to roll, they had to figure out some way to supervise all these parishes all over Germany. There were some bishops who converted from Catholicism to Lutheranism, but not all. So Luther became in addition to being a pastor and a writer, he became a supervisor. He took on the role of a bishop. And so he visited parishes all over Germany, and he found them in disarray. He was very upset about the quality of what was going on. It was leftovers from Catholicism, partly. And it was also, some of the people had gotten the essential message that you're not saved by works. They understood that. They liked that message. You are not saved by good works. So what's the corollary? Well, then I don't have to do any good works, right? I can just misbehave and God will save me. That was
Doug, we have an expression for that. It's called abide and glide.
Abide and glide. Okay, yeah. Okay, God saves me. It's his business to save me. I should have a good time. Anyway, Luther was upset. So one of his major reasons for writing the catechisms, both small and large, was to give a concise package of instruction that should make up the minimum of any Christian education. Now, as time went on, the Small Catechism in particular was identified as, this is what parents should teach their kids. This is the simplest version. It's small, and it's even largely memorizable. So you can teach your kids rote memory. That's how education used to be. Learn this, memorize these concepts. That was, quote, Christian education. The larger catechism was more likely to be used by a pastor in trying to figure out what he was going to preach on any given Sunday. So that's an overall picture of the Small Catechism. Now we get to the main subject for today, and we're going to spend 2 Sundays on the commandments. And Tim raised the question with me when Tim and I trade emails all week. We're Lutherans. We're used to being we're used to thinking in terms of saved by grace, not saved by law. And so what is this emphasis on the 10 commandments? Are we somehow not saved by grace? And the answer is, of course, we're not changing the teaching. We are saved by grace. But I wanted to point out two things. Notice in your small catechism that you've all figured out how to access. Down at the bottom of the 10 commandments, there is something called the conclusion or the close of the commandments. And Luther didn't want to let us off the hook. If you go back to the book of Exodus and read the 10 commandments, you find this very scary language. I, the Lord your God, am a jealous God, punishing the children for the sin of the fathers to the third and fourth generation of those who hate me, but showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me and keep my commandments. That's the last section of the 10 Commandments section in the small catechism. So you might think Luther would have skipped that paragraph, but no, he put it there and he said, that's the conclusion. That's the summary of the 10 Commandments. Okay, well, we might as well finish this though. He then, in the same fashion that he does the rest of the commandments, what does this mean? Now, God has just warned you, if you don't keep the commandments, he punishes for 1,000 generations. Here's Luther's explanation of this warning that appears in the commandments. God threatens to punish all who break these commandments. Therefore, we should fear his wrath and not do anything against them. But he promises grace and every blessing to all who keep these commandments. Therefore, we should also love and trust in him and gladly do what he commands. Okay, now this gets me in trouble because this says God threatens to punish all who break these commandments. Now, in my email to the group this week, I reminded you in my teaching and other settings, I have said before, I don't know if you want to admit this, but I admit it. I break each of the commandments every day.
You can't possibly keep them.
Well, that's the corollary of the teaching. I mean, it's because it's impossible to keep them. Now, I'm not saying that with glee, or I'm not gloating about it, but it's a fact. So what in the heck is going on here with this God threatens to punish? Do notice that Luther has pointed out God also promises to bless, showing love to 1,000 generations of those who love me. And then let's get to the second part of this thing that I sent to everybody.
Yeah, Doug, excuse my simpleness, but are you saying that every day you break 10 commandments?
Or more, yes.
Thought, word, and deed.
I'm sorry, but the answer is yes. We can discuss it in as we get to the individual ones. But I will quickly do an aside because Bill's asked the question. The first commandment says that I'm supposed to trust and love God above all else. I have an app on my phone that tracks the stock market. I will very often during the course of a day take a look at what's happening to my retirement fund. And I will admit that some days are worse than others, and I worry about the balance in that fund. At that moment,
Not trusting in that more than God, though.
well,
Are
at
you?
that moment, what is filling my mind is concern about the fund that I rely on for my income for the rest of my life. And
are
not,
you checking more frequently than before or less frequently than before?
well, that's just a question of how repetition. I'm telling you, I can do this with all the commandments.
And the assumption is that God can't handle your retirement fund. It's really up to the stock market.
God wants to be my God alone.
Don't you have a day where you forget to check it? I mean,
well,
Yeah, but he commits other sins.
okay. I just want to give you one example. Let's come back to this.
Don't you take the day off on Sunday?
Well,
Market's closed.
I do. That's right, Tim. That's the reason. I don't bother checking it on Saturday and Sunday because market's closed, not
What
because
does that tell you?
well, then President's Day and every federal holiday, you're not checking it either.
Okay, thank you for helping me out here. Now let me explain. Let me explain how we get from this emphasis on the commandments to the emphasis on grace. And we refer to this as the 3 uses of the law. We're going to be studying the 10 commandments for this week and next week. And the first thing you should know about the commandments is God is serious. He has given these commandments to people because he wants them to be followed. This isn't a game. This is really his answer. This is his answer for how life should be. And so that's the first use. People without the commandments are disobedient and wild in their behavior. And so God is saying, control your behavior. This is the way you should live. That's use number 1. Use number 2 is actually the one that Lutherans rely on the most. And it's because our inability to keep the commandments, because we are unable to keep the commandments, as I said, we break them on a regular basis. We are forced to the cross of Christ. Nothing in my hand I bring, only to thy cross I cling. I have to admit to God, I cannot do this on my own. I cannot keep these commandments. It is hopeless without Christ. That's the second use of the law. The law condemns us and then turns us to the cross where we find redemption. So that's the grace part. Now, the third use is one that's a little bit in contention. Some Lutherans are very radical on this and say you should never mention this third use because it adds law back into the equation. You've already said law in use 1. You've said grace in law in step 2. You're done. That's end of the argument. That's a very radical Lutheran position. But the Book of Concord does say there's a third use of the law, and that is to the Christian, okay, you're saved. Don't you want to know what God wants you to do? Not because it's going to save you, not because it's going to make your salvation any better, but don't you want to know what his advice is? This is how a good community operates. This is how a good Christian lives his life. That's the third use of the law. I'm going to tell you the law, but I'm not telling you you have to satisfy this or you don't go to heaven. I'm just saying God wants you to know that you should honor your father and your mother, or you should not steal, or you should not kill. Those are the 3 uses of the law, and that's why they are in the small catechism. And the emphasis for us is going to be the second use. we can talk more about how I break all these commandments, but that's the point. As I break the commandment, I then look to Jesus for salvation. So, questions on this part? I'm about to change the share one more time and jump to my small catechism. Questions? Okay. Sorry, folks, I'm looking for my small catechism. Here it is. Okay, this is the, I'm using the PDF file to organize this. Can you see it, the 10 Commandments?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay, this is the one that the PDF that comes from the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. I don't know why. I went to the ELCA to try to, follow the party line, and I could not find a free copy of the Book of Concord or the Small Catechism. I found ways that they wanted to sell me these things, but I couldn't find it. So this is a free version offered.
That's been right there.
The Lutheran
Since
Church.
you already belong, why would you have to pay for something?
Well, I already owned it, but I wanted something for you to be able to open.
That's almost an indulgence for the ELCA.
I don't know. Well, we do not say that you are saved by the Book of Concord, but because that would then make it an indulgence, I guess.
On
Okay.
this cheerful note, I'm going to have to leave
You're
you.
going to leave. Okay. Well, we finally got around to the first commandment, so
Yeah.
I'll tell you how it goes.
Have a good week,
Okay.
Tim.
Be blessed and stay warm, Tim.
Yes, thank you, Bill. Thank you for everything. Okay.
Bye.
I'll see you.
Okay. Notice that at the very top of the document that I have on the screen, it says, as the head of the family should teach them in a simple way to his household. That's why I said to you that the small catechism kind of evolved into a household handbook. It wasn't originally the intent of Luther, but it became this small, easy to teach, supposedly easy to memorize book that a father would teach his children. Now, the 10 Commandments are organized normally into what are called two tables or two tablets. The first tablet contains Commandments 1, 2, and 3. They don't divide equally because 1, 2, and 3 refer to our relationship with God. Commandments 4 through 10 relate to our relationship with other people. That's the traditional way to organize the tablets. And so that's what I'm going to do. And partly because of all this introduction stuff I've given anyway, I wouldn't be able to get through 5 if I tried today. So we're planning on looking at the first 3 commandments. And the first one is the big one. It's first for a reason. And it's simply, you shall have no other gods. That's the simple translation that's in the Book of Concord. If you go back to Exodus 20, you'll see some more language, but essentially, you shall have no other gods. And Luther asks, well, what does this mean? And the answer is, we should fear, love, and trust in God above all things. That's the explanation. Now, I've already admitted to you about my fixation on the stock market. And so why is that an issue related to this? It's the language right here. Okay, I'm just curious. Did that highlight happen on your screen? You can see blue text.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. I just want to make sure I'm communicating. Trust. God wants not just that I don't have an idol on my shelf. It's not do I have a statue of some god over on my shelf. It's to whom do you turn when you're having trouble? Or maybe you're not having trouble. Maybe things are going great. You're having a great day. Who do you praise? What crosses your mind as you experience trouble or good news? Think about that. What crosses your mind? Is the first thing that comes to your mind, God has promised me help, and I should call on him in a moment of grasping and danger? Or do I think of something else? What crosses your mind? Luther warns us that what our mind turns to, fixates on, meditates on, I think he uses the word meditate as his actual word, but that is what your God is. And then when you add this awful stuff about him being jealous and not accommodating another God, then if I break the commandment because I fixate on the stock market and forget that God provides all good things, then I've broken the first commandment.
Yeah, I believe, Tim, or Doug, sorry. I believe that in the Bible it teaches us to bring all things to God in prayer, whether it's, if we want to deliberate before we do something, we bring it to God first, is the thought here. And in my pocket small catechism that I got, I don't know from where, it must have been from you, it refers to the first commandment in the Bible reading of Exodus 32, which refers to the golden calf. And what Moses' reaction was through God to the golden calf. And a lot of us that are of that retirement age, like yourself and myself, our golden calf is probably our retirement fund, where we look to for comfort and peace of mind in times of trouble, because we think we can buy ourselves out of trouble with what we have left in that golden calf, so to speak.
Yeah, and I want to tell myself that I don't believe in my retirement fund. I don't. But you just used the word comfort. I'm afraid that that's what I have to admit. I feel a sense of comfort. My present analysis tells me that the balance is sufficient. And so therefore, my days ahead are good ones. Do you realize what blasphemy I'm speaking right now? That's not what I'm supposed to trust in God for my path to be a good one. Not that I've accumulated enough gold. Golden calf was the picture that Bill brought to mind. I mean, it's a very dangerous temptation. Jesus warned us about this. Wealth is insidious. Even if my heart isn't evil, I'm not trying to do bad things, but I have a sense of comfort that is coming from something that is not God. And Luther warns us that's what an idol is. And so, and this is the second use of the law. I'm not saying I'm unusual in this at all. I think most people have this problem. You look at your accumulated resources and you worry about them. Are they enough or whatever? And
Well, let me give you a relativity instance. There was in the New York Times this morning, because of the Texas grid fallout,
Yeah.
a man got his electric bill for $16,000,
Yes.
and because he had it put on his credit card for automatic payment, he's a retired Vietnam veteran. He is now cleaned out of his retirement fund, zero, because the credit card goes through and it posts his payment, and he has to live on a fixed retirement income of Social Security.
Yeah. I don't want to be distracted by this, but it occurs to me, what exactly, why did the bill go up? I understand that they've got a grid problem.
Yeah, because the PUC there are 220 choices to make for your utility providers in Texas because it's deregulated.
Okay,
We have about 20 or 30 here, but in Texas it's 220.
Okay.
And the PUC in Texas caps the utility maximum rate at $9 per kilowatt hour. So I calculated this guy was using about 62 kilowatt hours a day for a 30-day period. That's how you can get up to $16,000 in a single month's bill.
Okay, because of the cold, he really did use this much electricity. It wasn't some charge, some surcharge. He actually used more electricity. That's a different point. I thought he was getting some sort of surcharge bill that I don't know.
With those 220 choices, you go on a variable rate, and the PUC maxes it at $9 a kilowatt hour. Now, in the winter months, when I'm using gas and electric, I'm using over 100, 120 just for myself, and I know other people's that have families must be much higher.
Well,
but at $9 kilowatt hour, that would be $900 for the month for me. His hit 16,000.
Okay, probably down there in Texas, they don't have a large heating system in their house. So what he was basically using was the emergency heat part of his air conditioner. Most heat pumps.
Or he's all electric, right?
Yeah, he has an electric heat pump, and there is an electric emergency heat function, but it's expensive. And that, okay. I don't want to be distracted. Let's return to this problem of the First Amendment, the First Commandment. I'm thinking that I'm not alone in money being an issue. Closely related to that would be professional and job related concerns. My professional well-being, the respect I have in the profession becomes an idol if I let it. Martin Luther said that there's also a third one, which is very Lutheran in its approach, and that is we trust in ourselves. It's that works righteousness stuff. I don't really rely on God. I rely on myself, my own ability to do good works. That was the Catholic problem, before Lutheranism. If I could do enough Hail Marys, if I could pay for an indulgence to get myself out of purgatory, I could do all of these things. There was a whole list of things I could do. And the point is, I'm doing those things. I'm in control of my own well-being. So what am I trusting in? Here, I'm not trusting so much in my wealth and my profession. I'm trusting in me. Luther warned us that in that situation, you might even find yourself saying, well, now God owes me. If I've done all the things I'm supposed to do, including paying indulgences and saying the right number of Hail Marys, now God owes me something. Luther said, don't be deceived. A human being is never in a position where God owes you anything. Never. Your thinking is wrong if you're going down that path. So these are all reasons why I need to turn to the cross, going back to the second use of the law. I worry about my money. I might worry about my prestige and my professional position. I keep track in a checklist kind of a way of all the good things I do, and for all these reasons, I realize I violate the first commandment. Thoughts on the first commandment? I'm going to rush a little bit. I'm not going to worry too much about getting all three, but I want to go to the second commandment. Okay, no thoughts? Let's go to the second commandment, and that's misuse of the name of the Lord your God. You shall not misuse the name of the Lord your God. What does this mean? We should fear and love God so that we do not curse, swear, use satanic arts, lie, or deceive by his name, but call upon it in every trouble. Pray, praise, and give thanks.
I want to see how you break this one every day, Doug.
Well, you will see as we go through all of these commandments that Luther adds the positive section near the end of each of his explanations. And that's where you can find yourself not satisfying this. I don't think of myself as, I'm not heavy into cursing. I don't use a lot of swear words. Okay, I don't. But do I call on God's name and pray and praise and in giving thanks on a continued? Paul advised us in all things to pray in all things. The answer is no. Most days I forget that the blessings I'm receiving are coming from Christ. Now, if you ask me, I know the answer. I say, okay, yes, of course. All these good things come from God. But that didn't occur to me on a regular basis. So I'm going to say, yes, I violate this one. I'm not.
Doug,
go ahead.
Can I ask for clarification?
Sure.
All right. On the second commandment in my pocket, the Catechism, it says, the Bible reading for this is Leviticus 24:10 through 16, which is the punishment for blasphemy. Now, are you saying that what you did was blasphemy?
Well, okay, fair enough. Now remember, the Jews did not add. I'm reading from Luther's explanation, where he adds the positive. Exodus just has the negative. Don't misuse the name. If you use the name of God in anything evil, so for example, I commit you because you've done something to anger me, and so I say, God damn you. That is blasphemy. I'm calling on the name of God. I'm misusing the name of God in something evil. It is not my place to condemn you to hell. That there's a specific curse. You're all familiar with that curse. I mean, God damn, that's a curse. You can call on the name of God in evil things. And so that's why the list that Luther added was cursing, swearing, using satanic arts. Any use of the name of God in an evil context is blasphemy. People do it sometimes in a lie. To give weight to a lie, you might hear somebody say, I swear to God, I'm telling you the truth.
Yeah, I've heard that.
I swear, I swear this is the answer. But now it's you can go both ways here. If what they're saying is truthful, there's nothing wrong with that statement. You can call on the name of God for something good, but you cannot call on the name of God for something evil. So that gets back to the blasphemy line, Bill, that you're referring to. If I use the name of God in anything associated with evil, then I am blaspheming.
Yeah, Doug. And then I find it hard to believe that you blaspheme the Lord, because in your maturity here as a Christian and the way you are just as a person, you do not blaspheme the Lord and you do not curse. So I'm not sure this one, I can't see you breaking.
Thank you for speaking on my behalf. Thank you for speaking on my behalf. I will scroll down quickly to the 8th commandment and notice that Luther said that the explanation of the 8th commandment is to explain everything in the kindest possible way. So Bill is trying to find a way to explain away my behavior. So I appreciate that.
Saying it's not as bad as you're making it out to be.
Well, yeah, I know. Now keep in mind though, Bill, I'm going to agree that I do not blaspheme the Lord's name. I don't do that. But Luther added these positive connotations to each of these commandments. And that's where most of us will find that we trip up. So the positive on this one is, do I call on God in every trouble, pray, praise, and give thanks? The reason that I can say I don't do that is because, honestly, you can never do enough of that. Even if I did some of that today, I didn't do it continuously. So I could still question my giving thanks part. We're going to have the same issue in repeated places. You're being nice talking here about my blasphemy. How about the one about adultery? In what way have I committed adultery today? That's an interesting conversation. Val's not in the room, so I'll continue.
Right. It's going to be the Jimmy Carter defense. Go ahead.
Well, no, not quite. It's not that of course, looking at another person with lust. That's what Jimmy Carter got in trouble with. That's a violation. But no, Luther goes in more than that. He adds, husband and wife love and honor each other. That's an open-ended commandment. I can never do enough of that. So even if I didn't sleep with another woman, I can't honestly say that I have loved and honored my spouse in all that I've done today. That's how Luther makes all of these commandments unable to be followed. I don't think any of us, and we do the same thing down here with here's killing. Did you kill anybody today? Oh, of course not. I didn't kill anybody.
And I think there's a difference between breaking and not following to the fullest.
That's it. Okay, I'll go with you on that, Tim. But see, it's not that I didn't kill somebody. Did I help and support my neighbor in their physical needs today?
Okay.
No. So that's what I mean. I honestly do think I live a pretty straight life. I'm not committing murder and adultery on a daily basis. But the first two we're talking about are, who do you call on? What do you trust in God, and do you call on his name when you are in trouble, or if good things happen, in praise and thanksgiving?
See, Doug, and that's where I go back to the argument when you first said it at the beginning of class, is that if you fill up your mouth with enough of God's word every day, every morning, read the Bible, fill your mouth up with that, then only good things can come out of it, and there won't be any room for evil. But you have to watch yourself. I
do think that most of us, and I'm guilty of it too, we could benefit from working on what are called spiritual disciplines. Not because it's going to save you. The discipline won't save you. Jesus saves you. But if you want a life filled up with God, then you have to act like it. And so filling your life with Bible reading and prayer and good music and, I don't know, conversations like this one. These are all elements of filling your mind and your mouth with godly things. The reverse, the negative, the devil loves it when we go hours and days without mentioning the name of God. The devil wins when we ignore God. On that theme, one of my devotional readings has a lot of quotes from C.S. Lewis. And so C.S. Lewis wrote a book, well, actually a series of essays, but the book is titled after the last essay in the book. I think it's the Earth's Last Night, or the Last Night of the Earth. And it's a book about the reality of the end times. I read that this week. Apple Books is talk about temptation. When you can buy a book for $4.99 and have it instantly on your computer, that's my temptation. Just wonderful. You don't have to go to a bookstore. You just suddenly you have the book. Anyway, we did not get to the end of the first tablet. But we will do that. We will do the third commandment next week, and then we'll pick up with the second tablet, the honoring father and mother and what have you. So that's my current plan. Any questions before we jump to the Lord's Prayer? Okay. I'm going to mute you again just to cut out background noise. Let's close with the Lord's Prayer. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. And lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever and ever. Amen. So that's the class for today. Again, I muted you all, so you can't talk. So unmute yourself, say goodbye or something.
I'll second that, Bart. Be blessed, be safe, everyone.
Yeah, that's my dog saying it's time to go out. Just keep track this week of how many times you break the commandments.
We'll try.
We'll see if I'm alone in this depravity that I've described.
You want us to keep a tally, Doug? All right, here we go.
Keep a checklist, and we will do a mutual confession next week. But if you think about it, that's what's going on every Sunday in our church service. We do a confession because we think by as the Sundays roll around, your sins have piled up. That's what's going on. We're just never quite as emphatic about it as I was this morning.
Our public confession flushes them away.
And I do it for shock value, by the way. I think it's kind of helpful to have your Christian teacher tell you that they've broken all the commandments. And it's only 10 o'clock this morning.
Anyway. On that topic, I see we're now trying in-person worship March 7th.
Oh, good to know.
How did you,
Okay.
where was
How do you
that?
find that out?
On the usher sign-up list. You know, the online where you can sign up to be an usher?
So that's insider information.
Well, I don't know. They changed it because remember last week I was saying, hey, it still says February 21st, and you were saying you talked to Jeff and they're like, that's not happening.
Okay.
I didn't see any of, I didn't see anything official from Andrea, but on the usher sign-up list online on Sign Up Genius, it says March 7th now.
Well, I asked Jeff this morning and he said he didn't hear anything yet. He didn't know.
I'm a little
Well,
confused.
it could be that, Tim, you need to have enough notice to fill that responsibility. It's easy to say, never mind, we don't need anybody this Sunday, than it is to get somebody to come in if you decide to have.
Yeah, well, I'm kind of in charge of the ushers. I haven't actually pushed it because I'm like, well, I mean, I know Barb Dorsey and maybe even Linda have actually signed up for a few weeks, but I haven't actually tagged any of my chief ushers saying, hey, we're starting up in 2 weeks, because I'm not sure we really are. So I'm just going to let it play out for now. I mean, I very well can be the chief usher that first Sunday if I want to be, whatever.
So that's essentially 2 weeks from today.
Yes.
If we're optimistic, we might have worship. Well, what I've said before is that when the Sunday happens, that we have face-to-face,
Right.
I will return to having this class in 2 modes. We will meet in the cafe, and I will still turn on the Zoom setting for those who want to Zoom in. It's a little harder to manage, but that's what I'll do.
Right.
So,
Right.
anyway, thanks all.
Very
Have a good week.
good.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Doug.
You too.
Thanks, Doug.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Good class, Doug. Thank you. Bye.
Bye.